father's love is quiet until someone threatens his child. Scottsdale, 2006. A man walks into a high-end jewelry store with his 16-year-old adopted daughter. She is black. He is not. The store owner takes one look at the girl, blocks the display case with his arm, and says something so vile it stops the room cold. The girl's hand drops from her father's arm, not because she is scared, because she is ashamed. That single gesture breaks something inside the man standing beside her. Something no fighter on earth has ever managed to break. That man is Steven Seagal. He does not yell. He does not throw a single punch. He places both hands flat on the glass, leans forward, and whispers something that drains the color from the owner's face in 5 seconds. What did he whisper, and what happened to that store in the next 30 days? Now let me take you back just a few hours. Because what happened inside that jewelry store did not come out of nowhere. Started that morning with a phone call. Seagal was at home, a ranch property outside Scottsdale he had owned for about 4 years. Big land, quiet. He liked the desert because nobody bothered him there. Hollywood had slowed down for him by then. The big studio deals were behind him. He was doing smaller films, mostly overseas. The press had written him off the way they always do when someone stops playing the game. But Seagal was not retired. He was just living differently. That morning, his daughter came downstairs and asked him a question. Simple question. She wanted to know if he would take her to pick out a birthday gift for her best friend. The friend was turning 17. His daughter had saved up money from her allowance and wanted to buy her a silver bracelet. She had seen one in a store in Old Town Scottsdale, a place called Kingsley Fine Jewelers. Now here is the thing. Seagal was not a man who went shopping. He had people for that. Assistants. Staff. He could have handed her a credit card and called a driver. But his daughter asked him directly. She wanted him to come. She wanted her dad. And Steven Seagal, for all the roles he had played and all the fights he had been in, could not say no to that girl. Believe me, he would tell you himself. She was his weakness. The only one. He had adopted her when she was 3 years old. The details of how and why are private, and I will respect that. What matters is this. By the time she was 16, she was his whole world. He had raised her on that ranch. Drove her to school when he was in town. Helped with homework at the kitchen table. Taught her Aikido on the back patio every Saturday morning. Not to fight. To be centered. To know her own body and her own mind. She was a quiet girl. Smart. Gentle. Kept her grades high and her circle small. She did not care about her father's fame. She did not watch his movies. When kids at school asked if her dad was really Steven Seagal, she would shrug and say, "He is just my dad." That was enough for her. And it was everything to him. So when she asked him to drive her into town that afternoon, he said yes without hesitation. Put on a pair of boots, grabbed his keys and drove her himself. No security, no entourage, just a father and his daughter in a truck heading into Scottsdale on a Tuesday afternoon. They parked on the street 2 blocks from the store, walked side by side. She had her arm looped through his the way she always did. That was their thing. Since she was small, she would hold onto his arm when they walked together. Not because she needed to, because she wanted to, and he never once pulled away. They reached the store. Kingsley Fine Jewelers. Small place. High-end. The kind of store with a buzzer on the door and a man behind the counter who looks at you before he decides whether to let you in. The glass was thick. The display cases were polished. Everything inside that store screamed money and exclusivity. Seagal pressed the buzzer. The door clicked open. They walked in. The owner was behind the main counter. A man in his late 50s. Tanned. Gray hair slicked back. Gold watch. Name was Gerald Kingsley. He had run that store for 31 years. Built it from a small booth at a gem show into one of the most respected jewelers in the Scottsdale area. He had clients who flew in from out of state. He had a reputation. He also had something else. Something that did not show up in his business reviews or his Chamber of Commerce awards. Something ugly that lived inside him like a locked room that most people never saw. Gerald Kingsley looked up when the door opened. He saw Seagal first. Big man. Familiar face. Maybe a customer. Maybe somebody important. Then his eyes moved to the girl beside him. And everything changed. His posture shifted. His jaw tightened. He moved from behind the register and positioned himself in front of the main display case. Not to greet them, to block it. Seagal's daughter noticed it first. She felt the atmosphere change the way young people do. They sense hostility before they understand it. Her grip on her father's arm loosened just slightly. And then Gerald Kingsley opened his mouth and said the words that ended his life as he knew it. "We don't serve her kind here. Get your little slur out of my store before I call the police." The room stopped. The air stopped. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. And Seagal's daughter let go of his arm. Not fast. Not dramatic. Her fingers just slid away. Her hand dropped to her side. Her eyes went to the floor. And she took one small step backward. Away from the counter. Away from the man behind it. Away from her father. That step. That one small step. That is what did it. Seagal did not look at the store owner right away. He looked at his daughter first. Saw her chin drop. Saw her shoulders curl inward. Saw the girl who held onto his arm everywhere they went suddenly standing alone. 3 feet away from him, making herself small. And in that moment, something shifted behind his eyes. Something old. Something trained into the bones over 40 years of martial arts and street encounters and knowing exactly how much damage a human body can take before it stops working. But he did not use any of it. Not a single technique. Not a single strike. He turned to Gerald Kingsley, walked to the counter, placed both hands flat on the glass display case. Fingers spread, palms down, like a man steadying himself on the edge of a cliff. And he leaned forward, slowly, until his face was 6 inches from the store owner's face. Now get this. Gerald Kingsley was not a small man. He was 5'11", broad shoulders. He had been behind that counter for 3 decades and had dealt with every kind of customer. Angry ones, drunk ones, ones who tried to rob him. He had a pistol under the register and a panic button wired to the Scottsdale PD. He was not easily shaken. But when Steven Seagal leaned across that glass and spoke, Gerald Kingsley's face went white. Not red, not pink, white, like someone had pulled a plug and drained every drop of blood from his head in one go. Nobody else in the store heard what Seagal said. There was one other employee, a young woman at the back counter polishing a tray of rings. She told investigators later that she saw Seagal lean in and speak, but she could not make out a single word. She said the only thing she heard was silence. And then the sound of Gerald Kingsley's hand gripping the edge of the counter like he was trying to keep himself from falling down. Whatever Seagal said, it took less than 5 seconds. When he straightened up, his face was calm, controlled. He did not raise his voice. He did not point. He did not threaten with his body. He just stood there for one more second, looking at the man behind the counter, and then he turned around. He walked to his daughter. She was still standing with her eyes on the floor. He reached down and took her hand. Gently, the way you pick up something fragile. He lifted her hand and placed it back on his arm, right where it always was. Then he leaned down and kissed her on the forehead. "Come on, sweetheart. We are leaving." She did not say a word. She just held on. They walked out of the store. The buzzer clicked behind them. The glass door swung shut. Gerald Kingsley stood behind his counter, both hands flat on the glass exactly where Seagal's had been, staring at the door like a man watching a train coming toward him on the tracks. Seagal drove his daughter home in silence. She sat in the passenger seat with her hands in her lap, looking out the window. He did not push her to talk. He did not give a speech. He just drove, steady, both hands on the wheel, jaw set, eyes forward. When they got home, she went straight to her room, closed the door. He stood in the hallway for a long time, just stood there, listening. And when he heard her crying through the door, quiet, muffled, trying not to be heard, he pressed his palm flat against the wood and closed his eyes. He stayed there for 10 minutes. Did not knock. Did not enter. Just let her know, through the weight of his hand on her door, that he was there. Then he walked downstairs, went to his study, sat at his desk, and picked up the phone. But he did not call a lawyer. Not yet. He called his daughter's school first. Spoke to the principal for 20 minutes. Then he called her therapist. Spoke for another 15. Then he called a friend. A man he had known for years. A retired civil rights attorney in Phoenix named Harold Tate. That conversation lasted 2 hours. When he hung up, it was dark outside. The ranch was quiet. His daughter had not come downstairs for dinner. He made her a plate anyway and left it outside her door with a glass of water and a small note that read, "I am right here. I am not going anywhere." And then he sat on the back porch in the dark, looking out at nothing, and waited. For one night it was quiet. For one night it felt like maybe it would stay quiet. Like maybe the right thing to do was let it go. Walk away. Protect his daughter by forgetting it ever happened. But Steven Seagal was not a man who forgot. And the sun had not even come up yet before everything changed. At 6 in the morning, Harold Tate called back. The retired civil rights attorney. He had not slept either. He told Seagal something that shifted the entire situation from personal to public. "Steven, I made some calls last night. Your daughter is not the first. Kingsley has done this before. At least 3 other incidents in the last 10 years. 2 black couples. 1 Hispanic family. All of them were told the same thing in different words. None of them filed a complaint. They were too embarrassed. Too afraid. One of them told me she did not think anyone would believe her over a man like Kingsley. A white business owner in Scottsdale with 30 years of community standing. Believe me, that changed everything. This was not about one insult in one store on one afternoon anymore. This was a pattern. A man who had been doing this for years because nobody had ever made him stop. Seagal asked Harold one question. "Can we prove it?" Harold said, "I think we can. But I need you to do something first. I need you to go back to that store today. Not inside. Just outside. I need you to confirm something." Seagal drove back to Old Town Scottsdale that morning. Parked across the street from Kingsley Fine Jewelers. And he saw what Harold wanted him to see. A small black dome mounted above the entrance. A security camera, pointed directly at the front counter. If that camera was recording the day before, it caught everything. The arm blocking the case. The mouth forming the words. The girl stepping away from her father. Now here is where the pressure doubled. Because Gerald Kingsley did not sit still either. Kingsley had spent the night thinking about the man who leaned across his counter. He did not know it was Steven Seagal at first. But his employee, the young woman polishing rings, she recognized him. She told Kingsley after they left. And once Kingsley knew who he was dealing with, he panicked. He called his own attorney that night. A man named Victor Stahl, corporate lawyer. Handled the store's insurance, leases, and contracts. Kingsley told him what happened. But he did not tell the truth. He told Stahl that a large man had come into his store, caused a disturbance, intimidated him, and threatened him physically. He said the man had a young girl with him who was touching merchandise without permission. He said he asked them to leave politely and the man became aggressive. Stahl told Kingsley to file a police report. Establish the paper trail first. Make himself the victim before the other side could. So at 9 in the morning, while Seagal was parked across the street looking at that security camera, Gerald Kingsley walked into the Scottsdale Police Department and filed a report claiming he had been threatened and intimidated in his own store by an unidentified man. Now get this. The report made no mention of a racial slur. No mention of a 16-year-old girl. No mention of the words that actually came out of Kingsley's mouth. According to that report, Gerald Kingsley was the victim. He was the one who needed protection. Detective assigned to the case was a woman named Diane Correa. 15 years on the job. She took the report. She noted Kingsley's statement. She filed it properly. And then she did something Kingsley did not expect. She pulled the store's security camera footage. Not because she suspected Kingsley was lying. That came later. She pulled it because procedure required it for any intimidation complaint. Standard evidence collection. By that afternoon, Detective Correa had a copy of the footage on her desk. She watched it once. Then she watched it again. Then she called her supervisor. Because the footage showed everything. Every single second. The door opening. The father and daughter walking in. The store owner moving to block the display case. His mouth forming the words clearly. The girl's hand dropping from her father's arm. The man leaning across the counter. The exit. All of it. Crystal clear. Time-stamped. Undeniable. Gerald Kingsley had just filed a false police report. And the evidence that proved it was his own security camera. Within 24 hours, two things happened at the same time. Harold Tate filed a civil rights complaint with the Arizona Attorney General's office on behalf of Seagal and his daughter. He attached sworn statements from 2 of the 3 previous victims he had contacted overnight. Both women agreed to go on the record. And Detective Correa forwarded the security footage to the Scottsdale City Attorney with a note recommending the false report charge be investigated. Gerald Kingsley had tried to strike first. He had tried to make himself the victim. And in doing so, he had handed his enemies the weapon that would destroy him. If you are still with me, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because what happened to Gerald Kingsley over the next 30 days is something you will not believe until you hear every detail. Day 1. Harold Tate filed the civil rights lawsuit in Maricopa County Superior Court. The complaint named Gerald Kingsley personally and Kingsley Fine Jewelers as a business entity. It alleged racial discrimination, verbal abuse of a minor, and a pattern of racially motivated refusal of service spanning at least a decade. 2 previous victims signed on as co-plaintiffs. Their statements were attached. The filing was public record. By day 3, a reporter from the Arizona Republic picked it up. Not a big story at first. A short piece in the local section. Scottsdale jeweler accused of racial discrimination by celebrity client. They did not name the daughter. They did not need to. Seagal's name was enough. Day 5 is when the footage leaked. Nobody knows exactly how. Harold Tate denied it. Detective Correa denied it. Seagal's team denied it. But someone walked a copy of that security camera footage out of somewhere and put it on the internet. This was 2006. YouTube was barely a year old. Viral was not even a word most people used yet. But that footage spread like a brush fire. You could see everything. The door opening. The father and daughter entering. The store owner moving to block the case. And then his mouth, clear as day, forming every syllable of that word. You did not need audio. You could read his lips from across a room. There was no ambiguity. No room for interpretation. No defense. By day 7, the footage had been viewed over 200,000 times. Local news ran it. Then regional. Then national. CNN picked it up on day 9. Fox on day 10. The story had a headline now. Every outlet used a version of the same line. Jeweler caught on camera using racial slur against child. And this is where the real destruction began. Kingsley's celebrity clients started calling. Not to check in. To cancel. Custom orders worth tens of thousands of dollars were pulled overnight. A professional golfer who had been a customer for 12 years released a public statement saying he would never set foot in the store again. A real estate developer's wife who had spent over $100,000 there in the last 5 years told a reporter she was disgusted and ashamed she had ever given that man her business. The suppliers came next. Kingsley had relationships with diamond wholesalers in New York and Antwerp. 2 of them severed ties within the first 2 weeks. Not because of morality, because of liability. They did not want their names associated with a man whose face was on television forming a racial slur at a 16-year-old girl. Then came the reviews. Yelp was still relatively new in 2006, but Kingsley Fine Jewelers had a page. Within days, it was flooded. Thousands of 1-star reviews. Some from Scottsdale. Most from people who had never been within 500 miles of the store. It did not matter. The page was destroyed. The rating dropped to 1.1 out of 5 and never recovered. Believe me, Gerald Kingsley did not see this coming. He thought his lawyer could handle it. He thought the false police report would give him leverage. He thought his 31 years of community standing would protect him. He was wrong about all of it. By day 15, his landlord sent a notice. The building where Kingsley Fine Jewelers had operated for over 2 decades was owned by a property management company in Phoenix. They had a morality clause in the lease. Kingsley had never read it. Most tenants do not. But his landlord had, and a nationally televised racial discrimination scandal fell clearly within its terms. The notice gave him 60 days to vacate. By day 20, Kingsley's attorney Victor Stahl withdrew from representation. Not publicly. He just stopped returning calls. Kingsley found out when he called the office and the receptionist told him Mr. Stahl was no longer available for consultation on this matter. No explanation. No referral. Just gone. By day 25, the false police report charge was formally filed by the Scottsdale city attorney. A misdemeanor, not prison time, but it went on the record, and it confirmed publicly what the footage already proved. Gerald Kingsley had lied. He had lied to the police. He had lied to his own lawyer. And he had lied about a 16-year-old girl who never touched a single piece of his merchandise. Day 30. Gerald Kingsley locked the front door of Kingsley Fine Jewelers for the last time. He did not hold a closing sale. He did not post a sign. He simply turned the key, pulled down the shade, and walked to his car. The display cases were still full. The lights were still on inside. He did not even empty the register. 30 years to build, 30 days to destroy, and every single day of that destruction was earned. Now let me tell you what happened after. Gerald Kingsley filed for bankruptcy 2 months later. Chapter 7. Total liquidation. The store's inventory was auctioned off by a court-appointed trustee. The display cases that once held diamonds and sapphires behind locked glass were sold to a pawn shop in Mesa for $400. The sign above the door was taken down by the landlord's maintenance crew on a Thursday morning. Nobody watched. Nobody cared. Kingsley lost his home 6 months after that. A 4-bedroom house in North Scottsdale with a pool and a view of Camelback Mountain. It went into foreclosure. He moved into a rental apartment in Chandler. Then a smaller one in Gilbert. Then he left Arizona altogether. People who tracked these things said he ended up in a small town in Nevada, working at a gas station. Some said he managed it. Others said he pumped fuel and cleaned windshields. Either way, it was a long fall from a glass counter in Old Town Scottsdale. The civil rights lawsuit was settled out of court. The terms were sealed. Harold Tate never disclosed the amount. Seagal never discussed it publicly. The money, whatever it was, went into a trust for the daughter. She did not know the details until she turned 18. Even then, she did not touch it for years. The 2 women who came forward as co-plaintiffs received separate settlements. Smaller, but meaningful. One of them, a woman named Loretta Banks, told a reporter after the case closed that she had carried the shame of that store visit for 7 years. She said she had never told her husband what the man behind the counter called her because she did not want him to do something that would get him arrested. When she saw the footage on the news and realized it had happened to someone else, she picked up the phone and called Harold Tate within an hour. "I did not do it for the money," she said. "I did it because that little girl deserved to know she was not alone." Now here is the part of the story that matters most. Not the lawsuit, not the footage, not the bankruptcy. The part that matters most happened the night it all started. Before the lawyers, before the cameras, before the world found out. That first night, after Seagal made all his phone calls and sat on the porch in the dark, he went upstairs. It was past midnight. The house was silent. He walked down the hallway to his daughter's room. The plate of food he had left outside her door was untouched. The glass of water was half empty. The note was gone. He knocked. Quiet. One knuckle on the wood. "Sweetheart, can I come in?" Silence. Then a small voice. "Yeah." He opened the door. She was sitting on her bed, knees pulled up to her chest, eyes red. She had been crying for hours, but she was done now. That stage where the tears are gone and all that is left is the hollow feeling after. Seagal walked in and sat on the edge of her bed. The mattress dipped under his weight. He did not say anything right away. He just sat there. Let the quiet settle. Then he reached over and took her face in both of his hands. Gently, the way you hold something you are terrified of breaking. His hands were massive. They had broken bones. They had bent steel. They had done things on screen and off screen that most people could not imagine. But in that moment, holding his daughter's face, they were the softest things in the room. He looked her in the eyes and said, "That word has nothing to do with who you are." She tried to look away. He held her gently in place. "You are my daughter. You are my heart walking outside my body. And no man alive will ever make you let go of my hand again." She broke. Not the quiet crying from before. This was the deep kind. The kind that comes from somewhere below the chest. She grabbed his hand with both of hers and held on so tight her knuckles went white. And she did not let go. Not that night. Not the next day. Not for years. Believe me, that moment in her bedroom is the real story. Everything else, the lawsuit, the footage, the bankruptcy, the headlines, all of that was consequence. Important consequence. Justified consequence. But consequence. The story is a father sitting on his daughter's bed at midnight telling her that she is loved, that she is enough, that no word invented by small and hateful people can change what she is to him. That is the story. Now let me tell you where she ended up. Because this is the part that Gerald Kingsley never saw. The part that would have hurt him more than any lawsuit or news segment ever could. Seagal's daughter graduated from high school 2 years later, top of her class. She had applied to 7 colleges and was accepted by 5. She chose Howard University in Washington, D.C. Not because it was the closest or the easiest, because it was where she wanted to be. A historically black university with a legacy of producing leaders. She told her father she wanted to go somewhere that would teach her who she was, not just what she could do. He drove her there himself. No driver, no entourage, just the 2 of them in a truck, the same way they had driven to that jewelry store 2 years earlier. Except this time, when they arrived, she did not let go of his arm because she was ashamed. She let go because she was ready. She studied political science, then went to law school. Not just any law school. She got into Georgetown, top 10 in her class every year, focused on civil rights law, discrimination cases, employment law, housing law, the kind of law that protects people who walk into rooms where they are not welcome and are told they do not belong. Harold Tate, the retired attorney who had filed the original lawsuit, wrote her a letter of recommendation for her first internship. In it, he said, "I have practiced civil rights law for 40 years. I have never met a young person with more clarity about why this work matters." She graduated near the top of her class. And on the day she walked across that stage in her cap and gown, holding her diploma, her father was in the 3rd row, sitting still, hands in his lap, tears running down his face. He did not clap. He did not stand. He just sat there and watched his daughter become the thing that no store owner, no Slur, and no locked display case could ever stop her from becoming. Her thesis was published the following year in a civil rights law journal. It examined patterns of racial discrimination in retail environments in the American Southwest. It was cited in 2 federal cases within 18 months. And the dedication page carried just 1 paragraph. "To my father, who taught me that the strongest fist is the one that never opens, and the strongest hand is the one that never lets go." She never named him publicly. She did not need to. The people who knew, knew. And Steven Seagal, the man who had made a career out of breaking arms and throwing bodies through windows on screen, said in a private conversation years later that the proudest moment of his life was not any film, any fight, or any headline. It was watching his daughter walk across a stage in Washington, D.C., holding a degree she earned with her own mind, her own strength, and her own unbreakable spirit. He said, "I have done a lot of things in my life, some good, some not, but I got one thing right. I got her right. And I will tell you something. A father's love is quiet until someone threatens his child." But the loudest thing a father can do is raise a child who does not need saving anymore, who stands on her own, who walks into any room, any store, any courtroom, and dares the world to tell her she does not belong. That is the story, and every word of it is true.